So what we'll do now is turn this into a figure that's opposed to a prop, as a prop is basically a static mesh inside DAZ Studio, and a figure is a skeletal mesh. And once it is a skeletal mesh, it has one single bone, which is the root bone. And we're not going to be able to do anything with it, but from that bone, that's essentially like a bit like the hip bone on an object. From there, we'll be able to drag out other bones and create child bones and then populate them on the model and then associate those bones with face groups. Then we're going to have to go and fill in the weight maps for that, and then we'll be able to move these things. This sounds all more complicated than it really is. So let's go and do the first thing under Edit, Object, and then we head over to Rigging, Convert Prop to Figure. And we're not going to use triax, we're going to use the general weight mapping, inherit skeleton of parent, perfectly fine, hit accept, and then you see that our icon has changed into a figure. That's now the figure pulse rifle. I'm going to go and just remove that word there, figure, so that is just going to be the pulse rifle. And if we open this up, we see that we have one bone already. We can't quite see it because we're in the geometry editor. So let's go and switch over here to this tool, which is the joint editor. You can also get that here from Tools, Joint Editor, and make sure you're on the Tool Settings tab here. And that is our first bone looking at us here. It's got a start point and an end point, and we're going to leave it in place, but because we're not going to do anything with it, I might just go and double click the bone and call it root. Just, you know, because it's a root bone, you can call it anything you like. Call it hip if you like, call it Walter if you want. So let's do the first thing then and rig maybe the side piece at the top here. So that's this little part here. It will be a child bone of our root bone here. So let's go and right click on here and choose create child bone. Sibling would be on the same level as root bone. We don't want to do that. We want to have a child bone coming off that. And this one is going to be called the side. And the rotation order, I'm just going to have to think about this for a second. Probably going to have to start with a Z. So I don't know exactly if ZXY or ZYX. Let's go with ZXY because that's the main axis that I want to rotate it on, which is the Z axis in DAZ Studio. So let's go and do that. That looks almost good. It's not quite aligned, so let's take care of that. So this needs to go to the, let's go and look from the top here. It needs to go to exactly one side and probably sort of down here. And then we're going to make it a bit smaller as well. Sort of like that. And then it would be beneficial if we were to go and look at it from the side with transparency on. So right now, I don't really know where exactly this piece is because I can't look through the rifle. So what I'll do is select it, head over to the Surfaces tab, and then where it says wire here, I'm going to have to rename that in a minute. But under Geometry, let's go and drop down the cutout opacity a little bit. Sort of like this. That'll help me to position the side bone. So let's go start with the green one. That needs to go sort of down here perhaps, and then the end bone needs to be, or the end point needs to be in the same position. I think that should be sort of good here. We can actually do this numerically if we don't want to position this manually by hand, even though I mean we can, but if you wanted to do this a bit more accurately, you can go and head over back to your joint editor, the tool settings, and then you can see what the origin point looks like. Let's call this one -16, and then we'll say 31, and then we'll say -3 here. And we're going to use almost the same values for the other side. So we're going to use -16 here, and then 31 for the Y position. And then the X position, we're just going to go and guess as good as we can. Like that, and that's almost, no, that's pretty much what we want here. So this is our first bone. Perfect. Let me go and bring the opacity back up, and then we can go and see our bone in action, just because I wanted to show you the principle of rigging first before we go ahead and rig the rest. So right now with that bone selected, back on the tool settings tab, head over here to selection group where it currently says none. So that means this bone doesn't quite know what geometry it's supposed to move. So if we go and pick that, we're going to go and associate it with the site. It knows that it needs to go and move this face group here, but it can't currently do that because if we go to rotation here and then go and move this up or down, nothing happens yet because the weight maps have not been set up. And that means we have to go into this other tool here, which is this one, which is the node weight brush tool, or selected from here, node weight map brush. And then from there, we need to go and just right click on this, head over to weight editing, and then we go fill by bone selection groups. And if we had more bones than one, it would just fill all of them in the way we need them to. And if we go and select this weight map now, we can go and see that this is in fact 100% weight on this particular bone. Okay, if we go back to parameters under rotation and we go and in fact go to our rotate tool here, we can go, it is the Z axis that we need to rotate, and boom, there we can go and rotate our site. Is that cool or what? Now the problem is that we can go and rotate this literally too much, and we don't really want to do that. We want to have this as a limit. 0 needs to be the limit, and also we don't really want to have this rotate like that or like that, so we don't really want to see X or Y here at all. So let's go and address all these shortcomings before we set up all the other bones. So first of all, on the Z rotate, let's go and click this little gear icon and rename this. So instead of Z rotate, this, we're going to call this one site up, or site up, whatever you want to call it. And we want to go and make sure the maximum is set to 0 as it is right now. And I believe the minimum is something that we're going to have to work out. So it shouldn't go further down than this, maybe minus 33, 34, 35. Let's say minus 35. That's going to be the lower limit on this. So let's go and say the minimum is minus 35. And that is that. So now we can go and turn it only from here to there. But we still see the X and Y rotate here. So if you don't mind, you can leave that. We don't really expect people to go into this thing, but if you want to be pedantic about it, you can go and click these little icons here and then say, first of all, lock it so that it doesn't move at all. Anything that is locked cannot be moved. You can also set the limits if you like. Usually locking is enough. And the other thing that you can do here is go and hide it. So those are the two things. That means this thing is going to disappear in a moment. I'll do the same here. So locked and hidden. Hit accept. And that means that normally people in the preferences tab are not showing the hidden properties. That means this thing doesn't show up. So you could do the same on translation, because technically if we do just move this thing around, you could also translate this bone. And of course, we don't really want users to do that either. So we should do this on all these guys as well, at least lock them if you want, or make them invisible as well. Same with scale. We don't really want the users to scale this either. So I'll leave this up to you, and let's go ahead with the next bone.